More than 24 Michigan State University students protested today the lack of support at the school for Chicano or Latino students.
I have to let them know we're here and we're not going to take it anymore!
We want Chicano studies at this university! Enough with the lies, the broken promises, the negligence with this university's administration.
I have to let them know we're here and we're not going to take it anymore!
I'm mad, I'm angry. I got hate in me. And I don't want that to be for my little carnalitas, my little carnalitas. I want them to grow up, be proud of their home, because that's what Lansing is to us. It's our home, this is where we grew up.
We're fighting for to see that our future and our children will continue this march.
This Victor Sanchez Boulevard. It should be around High Street. That picture.
We want Chicano studies at this university. I'm the one who you call mojada, wetback, spit, beaner, greaser, nail ese. I'm an educated Chicana, an Azteca warrior, una revolucionaria, aguillista, a zapatista. Chingao, don't you get it? I'm a mechista.
I don't see anybody saying that when the English department wants books, that the English department is making demands on the university. When I started to assemble this movie, I was told in order for it to be successful, I had to make myself the center of the film and use a narrative of self-discovery. Otherwise, audiences would find it confusing and no one would want to watch the film. After much debate, both internal and external, I decided not to do that. The true triumph of this story and the triumph of Chicano indigenous organizing across the country is that it is accomplished as a community and across generations. History made from below. The masses make history, and this story is an example of that. There is no way to bring you, the viewer, every single one of the hundreds of voices that raised the cry for liberation during this struggle, but we will bring as many as possible. And if it gets a little confusing sometimes, remember, this is the people's story, the people's cinema. Who did what is less important than the fact it was done.
How do you not teach Chicano studies and call yourself an educational institution?
On December 4th, 1992, a coalition of Chicano, Latino, and Asian Pacific undergraduate students at Michigan State presented MSU President Gordon Geyer with a list of 15 demands. Among those 15 demands, 3 would come to dominate the political landscape of student activism at MSU for the next decade and beyond. Michigan State take responsibility for its social role in its agricultural programs by honoring the United Farm Workers Grape Boycott. Michigan State create a Chicano Latino Studies Center similar to Wayne State University. This program to do its own recruitment, retention, and teach its own curriculum. Michigan State recognized the Chicano as Native American, indigenous to this continent.
When I came here, I thought I was back in the 60s. I loved it. There were demonstrations by students. They were saying Chicano power. I thought, oh my God, I've died and gone to heaven. The students wanted a Chicano studies program. So I wrote up a 1-page proposal. That's all they wanted. They didn't really think I was going to do anything. They just really wanted to shut down the students, right?
Everybody in the group maybe had different motivations or different things that sparked their passion. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we're all fighting for the same thing at the end of the day. Chicano studies. And we won, right?
People would always say, oh no, well that takes place in California, Texas, New Mexico. And it always seemed that maybe people thought, we were far from it. I remember certain people telling me, yeah, that's not gonna happen here. However, all of these accounts really taught me that we didn't have to look south, we didn't have to look west. We just had to look inward.
Higher education was not something that was talked about in my house. It was, you're going to graduate from high school, you're going to get a job, and then you're going to help support the family. I felt really guilty because I thought to myself, this is really, I'm betraying my family by going to these meetings.
We would have to read books and talk about them. When we would read about Voltaire, Sun Tzu, Clausewitz, Marx, and we would have these discussions about what it means. What's it mean in the movement now? How does that pertain to us?
And so, the thing with ethnic studies, it gives us this belief and concept that our history matters. And you actually start to learn it, and to realize that that we were contributors to we were contributors, and then secondarily, it's important for non-people of color, for white people to get that perspective too.
In retrospect, right, as a professor now, probably a lot of those people just were like, I got something in the crock pot. Why am I still here? Getting yelled at by some 19-year-old Mexican. Well, there's more than one way to solve this problem, people. Capitulate now.
Concurrently in Lansing, 3 watershed events served to politicize a core of community college students who would transfer to MSU from the local community college to form MECHA at Michigan State in the early 1990s. The November 2nd, 1991 police murder of Cipriano Torres Jr., the May 5th, 1994 on-air racist attack by Q106 DJ Tim Barron, and the June 12th, 1995 electoral rejection of Cesar Chavez Avenue by the greater white community plunged these MECHA students into a cultural political battle reflective of the struggle ramping up in the streets of their home, Lansing, Michigan.
2 years ago, the city of Lansing killed one of my brothers, a Mexicano. We have not forgotten. See, that's in my heart now. And I know how each one of you reacted to it. I'm mad, I'm angry. I got hate in me.
I remember when we were young, one time there at a ShopRite there on Willow 2, across from Olympic Royal. Went to the store and there was a lady and she started asking me questions about the milk. She started talking to me in Spanish. And I went home and I told my father and he was like, yeah, good, I'm glad you did that. He really enforced me to me. He said, hey, anytime your people need help, you make sure you help them out. You need to help out your people. And that's what I felt Cipriano in this case was. It was a calling from our people, from our community, and I answered it.
The Mexican community was, bam. I mean, they rallied fast. I was surprised at how fast they came together. Really surprised. And I went to the town hall or whatever they had at the time. And when I went in there, I really went in there thinking that this 23-year-old kid bit off more than he could chew. And my opinion wasn't necessarily of sympathy or empathy. I just wondered what had happened. I wanted to know the truth. That's the reporter in me. You know what that's like. So I was reporter first, Chicana second, and I think that this is the thing that made me the activist.
But some members in the community had organized some community meetings, and they were at the old Lansing Civic Center, I believe, and that was like the first time that I got involved in that kind of sort of politicized in a way forum.
The shooting of Cipriano Torres, the way I heard it as a 7th grader, was from my mother, who was on the committee that attempted to hold the law enforcement accountable for their slaughter and murder of Cipriano Torres.
There's an issue that's upsetting many in Lansing's greater Latino community. Good evening, I'm Jane Aldrich.
And I'm David Andrews. Today, they met all day long on what actions to take against a local radio station that aired a promotional segment they consider to be insulting and degrading to their Hispanic culture.
Some are giving away free trips to Mexico City, but we're bringing Mexico to you. That's right, we're giving away Mexican. Real live Mexican. Ay, caramba. We'll be smuggling illegal aliens across the border in the wheel well of a station van, and we'll give one to you. Imagine your own personal Mexican. They'll wash your car, clean your house, pick your crop, anything you want, because if they don't, you'll have them deported. Adios, amigo. Be the 10th caller when you hear this sound and win a Mexican. Members of this station and their families are not eligible to own Mexicans. Bathing and delousing of Mexicans is winner's responsibility. Station assumes no liability for infectious diseases carried by Mexicans. Celebrate Cinco de Mayo in your own home every day with your very own Mexican. People listening to win.
Q106 was just a really distasteful campaign against the community, and it was led by Tim Barron and the station, because they gave him permission to do it and they didn't admonish him for doing what he was doing. And what he did was he worked with Fred Stackable. Fred Stackable was an attorney who really hated the idea of having to change the address on his stationery from Grand Avenue to Cesar Chavez Avenue.
Q106 partnered with the attorney Stackable, Frank Stackable. On and off, I would listen to folks say that Stackable was using that platform almost exclusively to talk about the injustice of naming this street over Cesar Chavez. People, they came out to vote.
The controversy continues tonight over Lansing's newest street sign, which reads Cesar Chavez Avenue.
I wasn't involved in the Cesar Chavez Avenue process. That was all Paulo, and he went by the book, did it all by the book. It was a done deal. It was a non-issue.
It's a slap in the face to the Hispanic community and to the greater minority community.
I literally was in my bed one day. I got up and I said, I'm going to do this today. Whatever it is, I'm going to do it. I just sat on the edge of the bed and said, okay, I want a street. I want a street for me and mine. And of course, the first person that came to mind was Cesar Chavez, of course. So, well, here's a man who walked the walk. Here's a man who fought for those who couldn't fight for themselves. He's the reason many, if not all of us, are here today. So I literally called the state journal and said, hey, my name is Paulo, and I'm going to rename a street in Lansing.